My name is Vanessa Hale. I'm 34 years old, and if you asked most people who know me, they'd probably say I'm the woman you call when your life is falling apart at 2 in the morning because I won't ask why you messed up. I won't lecture you. I'll just show up. Gas in the tank. Phone on silent. No questions asked until you're ready to talk. I've always been that person. The reliable one. The calm one. The one who doesn't take up space. For friends, coworkers, neighbors, and most of all for my family. Maybe especially for my family. And maybe that was the problem. I wasn't born into money. None of us were. My parents worked blue-collar jobs in Pittsburgh, long shifts, tired hands, quiet resentment they never quite learned how to name. We lived in a narrow house where every sound carried footsteps on the stairs, doors closing too hard, voices raised just enough to signal disappointment without admitting it. We were raised on rules instead of reassurance. Work hard, don't complain, don't embarrass the family. Love was implied, approval was conditional. There were 3 of us kids, and somehow from the beginning, our roles were decided without a meeting. My older sister Madison is 37. She has always been magnetic in a way that bends rooms toward her. Loud laugh, quick smile, big gestures. She walks like she expects the world to respond, and most of the time it does. Madison wanted to be seen as exceptional before she ever knew what exceptional meant. Even as kids, she didn't wait her turn. She took it. Then there's my younger brother Elliot, 29, the peacemaker, the buffer, the one who learned early that silence could be a survival skill. He has a soft heart and a nervous laugh that fills the air whenever tension creeps in. When arguments start, Elliot changes the subject. When voices rise, he makes jokes. He's always been the glue, stretching himself thin to keep everyone else together. And then there was me, the quiet middle, the dependable middle, the invisible middle. Madison and I were never close. Growing up, she mocked me for reading instead of going out, for choosing computer science electives instead of anything useful, for being practical in a family that valued personality over preparation. She used to say I was too boring to ever succeed at anything that mattered. But Madison was our mother's golden daughter. When she dropped out of college, Mom said school just wasn't her environment. When she totaled Mom's car and blamed the brakes, Mom said accidents happen. When she bounced between jobs with big dreams and thin follow-through, Mom said ambition couldn't be rushed. Somehow Madison always landed on her feet, and when she didn't, Mom made sure there was something soft underneath her fall. I learned early that praise was scarce and criticism was efficient. So I adapted. I did everything by the book, followed rules that weren't written but were always enforced. I graduated top of my class, earned a full scholarship to Carnegie Mellon, built a career in tech quietly, steadily, without asking for applause. I didn't flaunt my money. I still drove a 10-year-old sedan with a faint rattle in the dashboard. I wore the same winter coat I bought in 2017, the zipper slightly crooked but still functional. I learned that visibility came with consequences in my family questions, expectations, requests. So I kept my success small and contained. Over the past decade, I did well for myself in silence. And maybe that silence taught them something dangerous. 3 years ago, just after the worst of the pandemic eased, Madison lost her job. She told everyone it was about personality conflicts, about management not understanding her leadership style, about people being threatened by her ideas. She said it with confidence, like if she repeated it enough times, it would become fact. Mom believed her instantly. Behind closed doors, though, Madison was panicking. She had a spouse, 2 kids, a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs, a leased SUV with monthly payments hovering just under $1,000, and suddenly no income to hold it all up. I remember the night she called me. It was late, past midnight. Her voice sounded tight, brittle, like she was holding herself together with clenched teeth and caffeine. She didn't ask for help outright. Madison never did. She talked around it, about stress, about timing, about how unfair everything was. I offered to help, not out of obligation, not because anyone pressured me, but because I believed family meant stepping in before things broke, especially for the kids who had nothing to do with their mother's pride. I told her I'd cover a couple of months, just to give her breathing room. A couple of months became 6. 6 became a year. Soon I was paying the mortgage, the electric bill, the gas, the internet, the car lease, everything except groceries. Every month, like clockwork, thousands of dollars left my account and quietly held her life together. Madison thanked me sometimes, but it always sounded strained, like gratitude cost her something. Accepting help from me bruised her pride, and I could feel it every time my name appeared on her screen. To be clear, I never lorded it over her, not once. We never told Mom or Elliot. Madison insisted it would embarrass her, and I respected that. I never asked when she'd pay me back, never asked if she was looking for work. I told myself she was trying, that she just needed time. What I didn't realize was how much she'd rewritten the story in her head. That my help wasn't generosity anymore, it was obligation. That my silence wasn't kindness, it was weakness. That my support wasn't love, it was something she deserved. I didn't see the shift when it happened. I didn't want to. But looking back now, that was the moment everything quietly changed. And I was the last person in the family to understand it. The first few months after Madison lost her job felt almost normal. That was the strange part. On the surface, nothing collapsed right away. The lights stayed on. The kids kept going to school. The SUV stayed parked neatly in the driveway like a promise no one questioned yet. Madison kept up appearances, posting throwback photos on social media, vague captions about reset seasons, and trusting the process. And I kept paying. At first, I told myself this was temporary, a bridge, not a destination. That was the word I used in my head, bridge. Something solid, something you cross, not something you live on. Every transfer came with an internal justification. Just this once. She'll figure it out. The kids need stability. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers. Not Elliot. Not even my boyfriend Daniel. Not at first. I didn't want opinions. I didn't want concern. I didn't want anyone asking why I was giving so much to someone who had never learned how to give back. Daniel noticed anyway. He noticed when I stopped talking about weekend trips, when I hesitated before ordering takeout, when I paused longer than necessary while checking my bank app. One night, curled up on the couch, he asked gently, "Are you okay?" I almost said yes, almost. But something about the way he asked, like he already knew the answer, made the words catch in my throat. I told him I was helping my sister out for a bit, just a rough patch. How much help, he asked, not accusatory, just careful. I gave him a number. His eyebrows lifted before he could stop them. "That's a lot, Vanessa." "I can afford it," I said quickly. Too quickly. "And it's family." He nodded, but I could see the concern settle in. "Just make sure you're not setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." I laughed it off, told him he was being dramatic. Looking back, I wish I'd listened. By month 6, Madison still hadn't found work. Or rather, she hadn't found work she felt was worthy of her. Every potential job had a flaw. The hours were beneath her, the pay insulting, the management toxic. She talked about consulting, about starting something of her own, about how she just needed the right opportunity. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. I told myself it wasn't my place to push. That pressure would only make things worse. That if I stayed calm and supportive, she'd get back on her feet. What I didn't notice was how her tone changed. At first, she used words like "thank you" and "I owe you." Then it became, "Can you spot me this month?" Then the payment didn't go through. "Did you already send it?" There was no malice yet, but there was assumption. She stopped asking before expenses. She informed me after. If something bounced, it wasn't panic, it was irritation, like a system had failed, not a person. I remember one moment clearly. We were on the phone, and she mentioned casually that she was thinking about upgrading the SUV. Said the current one didn't reflect where she was headed. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. She didn't laugh back. "Well, she said I'm not going to drive something that screams failure. The kids deserve better." The words landed wrong, not sharp, just heavy. I didn't say anything. I paid the bill that month anyway. By the end of the first year, I was covering nearly everything. Mortgage, utilities, insurance gaps, the lease. Thousands of dollars every month siphoned quietly out of my account while Madison maintained the illusion of independence. She didn't invite me over as much anymore. When I did come, she acted different, less warm, more defensive, like my presence reminded her of something she didn't want to acknowledge. Sometimes she'd make jokes about how I lived like a monk, or how I wouldn't understand real pressure. Once, half laughing, she said, "Must be nice having nothing tying you down." I stared at her, wondering how she could say that to the person literally holding her life together. But I swallowed it, like I always did. Because confronting Madison had never ended well. Because silence had always been safer. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed that if I just stayed patient, if I just stayed kind, this would resolve itself. I told myself she was embarrassed, that her edge was really shame. What I didn't realize was that shame, left unchecked, has a way of curdling into resentment. And resentment doesn't stay quiet forever. Thanksgiving came quietly that year. No big announcements, no dramatic family group chat debates, just the usual messages from Mom about who was bringing what followed. by Elliot's polite attempts to make sure no one felt left out. We gathered at Mom's cramped house like we always did, too many people, not enough chairs, folding tables squeezed together with mismatched tablecloths that never quite covered the stains. I arrived early as usual. I always did. It was easier to help than to explain why I felt awkward standing around with nothing to do. I carried in bags of groceries, trays of food, and a pie I'd picked up from a bakery Madison once said she liked. Mom barely noticed. She was already stressed, already overwhelmed, already focused on whether Madison would show up on time. Madison arrived late. Of course she did. The front door swung open with just enough force to announce her presence. Cold air rushed in, followed by her voice, loud, bright, commanding attention before anyone had a chance to look annoyed. She was wearing a suede jacket that definitely wasn't cheap, and a new smartwatch that caught the light every time she gestured. I noticed both immediately. Not because I was jealous, but because I paid the mortgage on the house she lived in. She barely looked at me. No greeting, no nod. Just a quick glance that slid past me like I was part of the furniture. She hugged Mom, ruffled Elliot's hair like he was still a kid, and launched into a story about traffic and rude drivers and how exhausting her life had been lately. I told myself not to read into it. Dinner was loud and crowded voices, overlapping dishes, clattering. I helped serve food, refilled drinks, cleared plates. Old habits die hard. When dessert came out, someone complimented the pie. I smiled and said, "Yeah, the bakery on 5th finally reopened. I'm glad it turned out okay." Madison didn't look at me when she spoke. "Yeah," she said loudly enough for the table to hear fork tapping against her plate. "Thanks to people who actually contribute to the family." The room went quiet, not completely, but enough. Enough for the words to land, enough for them to echo in that uncomfortable space where no one quite knows whether to laugh or apologize. I blinked. For a moment, I genuinely thought I'd misheard her, that maybe she meant something else, that maybe this was one of her jokes that didn't quite translate. I looked at Elliot. His eyes were wide fixed on his plate. He gave me a quick glance, one of those looks that says, "Did she really just say that?" then looked away. No one corrected her. No one challenged her. Mom laughed weakly and said something about how everyone pitched in different ways. Someone changed the subject. Plates clinked again. Conversation resumed, thinner than before. I forced a smile and kept eating. Inside, something shifted. Not snapped, not shattered, just moved. Like a shelf quietly cracking under weight it had carried too long. I told myself Madison was stressed, that she didn't mean it, that it was just a poorly worded joke. She'd always liked her jabs wrapped in humor. It gave her plausible deniability. But as the night went on, the comments kept coming. Little things. "Oh, Vanessa wouldn't understand. She doesn't have real responsibilities. Must be nice working from home in pajamas. Some of us actually have mouths to feed." Each remark landed softly enough that I could almost convince myself it wasn't intentional. Almost. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind anyone that I'd brought the main course the last 3 years, that I'd paid for a caterer once when their oven broke, that I'd quietly covered thousands of dollars in bills while sitting at that same table being talked about like I was freeloading off Goodwill. I didn't say anything, because saying something would have meant admitting the truth out loud, and once spoken there would be no going back. When I left that night, Mom hugged Madison longer than she hugged me. Madison didn't say goodbye at all. She was already distracted laughing at something on her phone. I drove home in silence. The pie box sat empty on the passenger seat. The road lights blurred together. I replayed her words over and over, not angrily, not even sadly, just clinically. People who actually contribute to the family. For the first time, a thought crossed my mind that I immediately pushed away. What if she really believes that? I didn't know it then, but that dinner was the last time things were still salvageable. The line had been crossed, and Madison had crossed it without even looking back. The shift after Thanksgiving was subtle, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. Madison stopped returning my calls as quickly. Texts that used to get replies within minutes now sat unanswered for hours, sometimes days. When she did respond, her messages were short, transactional. No warmth, no small talk. Just updates about bills, reminders about dates, assumptions that I would handle things like I always had. I told myself I was being paranoid, that everyone gets busy around the holidays, that stress made people distant. But then December arrived, and with it the Christmas group chat. It started innocently enough. Elliot suggested we do something different this year. Madison's house had more space. The kids wouldn't have to be bundled up and dragged across town. It made sense. Madison replied with enthusiasm, said they'd host, Said she'd handle the main meal. I didn't comment. I never did in group chats. I figured my presence was implied. It always had been. 2 days later, my phone rang. It wasn't a text. It wasn't in the group chat. It was Madison. Her voice was clipped professional, like a manager calling an employee in for a quick chat. Vanessa, she said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. Listen, I've been thinking. I don't think it's a good idea for you to come this year. I actually laughed at first. A short surprise sound that slipped out before I could stop it. What I said, what do you mean? Well, she continued, and I could hear her choosing her words carefully. Things are tight. It's really more of a family-only thing this year. We don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable. I waited, let the silence stretch. I am family, I said finally. She sighed like I was being difficult. You know what I mean. Everyone's pitching in, bringing something, helping out, and you always kind of show up empty-handed. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Empty-handed, I repeated. Madison. I've brought the main course the last 3 Christmases. I hired a caterer when your oven broke. Well, that was different, she said quickly. This year is just different. I was about to remind her of everything else. The bills, the transfers, the months, the years. Then she said it. Look, I don't want to argue, but there's no room at the table for freeloading losers. The word hit harder than I expected. Freeloading. I went very still. In that moment, something crystallized. Not anger, not even hurt, just clarity. Madison didn't resent me because I'd helped her. She resented me because I had the power to stop. And in her mind, that made me dangerous. So you don't want me there, I said calmly. It's not personal, she replied immediately. Of course it was. I said message received. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I hung up, set my phone down, and sat there for a long time staring at the wall. Then I opened my laptop. What Madison didn't know. What no one knew was that for the past 26 months, I'd been the financial scaffolding holding up her entire life. Every month, like clockwork, I wired $3,700 to cover their mortgage, utilities, internet, and the lease on that SUV. I never missed a payment, not even when I had surprise dental surgery, not even when my own savings took a hit. And now I was a freeloader. I logged into every account. Mortgage auto pay disabled, car lease canceled, utilities scheduled payments removed. No warning, no dramatic email, no family announcement. I just stopped. When I closed my laptop, something unfamiliar settled over me. Peace. I didn't expect immediate chaos. These things take time. Grace periods, reminder emails, polite notices before the real consequences arrive. But I knew what was coming. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about it. I just waited. The first week was quiet. Too quiet. No frantic calls. No angry texts. No dramatic confrontations. Just silence, stretching out longer than I expected. For a moment, I wondered if Madison had noticed at all. Maybe she had money tucked away. Maybe she'd finally figured something out. Or maybe she was still living in the grace period, those invisible buffers that soften reality before it hits hard. I went about my days as usual, logged into work, answered emails, cooked dinner with Daniel in the evenings. I didn't mention what I'd done, not yet. Part of me wanted to see how long it would take before the universe corrected itself. It took exactly 3 weeks. I woke up on a Tuesday morning to 7 missed calls, all from Madison, then 10 more, then 17. My phone buzzed across the nightstand like it was alive, vibrating with urgency. I hadn't heard from her in years. There were texts, too, short at first. Hey, call me when you get this. Something's wrong with the bank. Did you change something? I didn't answer. I made coffee, fed the cat, sat at my desk like it was any other morning. The calls kept coming. By lunchtime, the voicemail started. Her tone in the first one was cautious, almost polite. Vanessa. I think there's been a mistake. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Probably a system issue. Just call me back. The second voicemail was sharper. The power company says we're behind. That doesn't make sense. Did you forget to send it? By the 5th voicemail, her voice cracked. Rachel's freaking out. The kids can hear us arguing. Please just pick up. I listened to them all. Not with satisfaction, not with anger. With something closer to detachment. This was what standing back felt like. By day 3, the messages stopped being polite. What the hell is going on? You think this is funny? The bank says we're in default. I still didn't respond. I hadn't blocked her. That would have been too easy. I wanted her to sit with the uncertainty, to hear her own voice echo into the silence she'd once filled with smugness. Then my phone rang late Sunday night. Mom. Her voice was tight, wrapped in that familiar blend of forced calm and barely concealed panic she always used when she was about to guilt me. "Vanessa, honey," she said, "I just got off the phone with Madison. She's very upset." I said nothing. "She says you've been acting strangely, that you canceled some payments or something. I don't know the whole story, but they're in a tough spot right now." A pause. "And you know how proud Madison is. She wouldn't ask for help unless it was serious." I swallowed the laugh, rising in my throat. "Mom," I said slowly, "do you know how long I've been paying Madison's bills?" Silence. "Well," she said hesitantly, "I knew you helped a little after she lost her job." "A little," I repeated. My voice was sharper now. "Try over 2 years. Mortgage, utilities, car lease. Thousands of dollars every month." Another silence. Then quietly you offered. There it was. I did, and she never once said thank you. But now, because I didn't want to be insulted and uninvited from Christmas, I was the villain. "It's Christmas," Mom said softly. "Family should be together. Madison made a mistake. Can't you be the bigger person?" That phrase again. Be the bigger person. I'd heard it my whole life, when Madison shoved me and I got blamed for yelling, when she borrowed my things and broke them, when I was told not to make a scene. "No," I said firmly, "not this time." Her voice hardened. "So you're just going to let your niece and nephew freeze?" "They're not my responsibility," I said quietly, "and it's not my job to clean up Madison's messes anymore." She hung up. I stared at my phone long after the call ended. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Was I being cruel? Was this too far? Then I remembered every Christmas where I cooked, paid, smiled, and swallowed insults. The doubt faded, and I waited for the next shoe to drop. The next call didn't come from Madison. It came from Elliot. That alone told me something was wrong. Elliot never called, unless it mattered. He preferred texts, gentle check-ins, memes, half-jokes that softened hard truths. When his name lit up my screen late Friday afternoon, my stomach tightened before I even answered. "Hey," he said. His voice was low. "Careful. Do you have a minute?" "Yeah," I said. "What's going on?" There was a pause. Not the kind where someone is distracted, the kind where they're choosing how much damage to do with their words. "I just came from Mom's," he said. "And you're not going to like this." I leaned back in my chair, already bracing myself. What did Madison say now? Elliot exhaled slowly. "She told Mom that you stole from her." The room felt suddenly too quiet. What I said. "She said you hacked into her accounts," he continued quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "Canceled everything out of spite. That you've always been jealous of her and finally snapped." For a moment, I couldn't speak. That's not even I stopped. There was no sentence that could finish that thought without sounding absurd. "She knows that's a lie." "I know," Elliot said softly. "I know." But she showed Mom bank statements, just pieces, the parts where the payment stopped. My hands went cold. "She told her you were trying to destroy the family from the inside," he added. "Like you planned this, like some kind of revenge." Something inside me went still. Not angry, not shocked. Just empty. "I have records," I said after a moment. "Every transfer, every account, everything." "I figured," Elliot said. "But Mom doesn't want to see them. She said it would only make things worse." Of course she did. Evidence was inconvenient when it threatened the version of reality she'd chosen. "I just thought you should know," Elliot said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said. And I meant it. Elliot had always tried. None of this is on you. But the damage was already done. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. I stood in my hallway staring at it for a full minute before opening it. The paper was heavy, official, cold. A cease and desist. Madison had apparently spoken to a legal advisor translation, a friend of a friend, who once took a business law class and was accusing me of unauthorized financial interference, sabotage, emotional harm, demanding restitution. I read it 3 times. Then I placed it neatly on the counter and didn't respond. Instead, I went back to my files. Every transfer, every invoice, every email where she asked no expected help. If Madison wanted to turn this into a war, she'd picked the wrong opponent. That weekend, I ran into her spouse Rachel at the grocery store. I almost didn't recognize her. She was pushing a half-empty cart hair, pulled back in a messy knot, eyes ringed with exhaustion. No makeup, no polish, just someone worn thin by stress. She didn't see me at first. I could have walked away. But then she looked up. Our eyes met. Her face hardened instantly. So she said quietly, "Are you proud of yourself?" I blinked. "Excuse me." "You couldn't just let it go," she said, voice trembling. "You had to ruin everything just to prove a point." I stared at her, incredulous. I supported your household for over 2 years. I stopped after your wife called me a freeloader and uninvited me from Christmas. She opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. I just stopped fixing it. I walked away before she could respond. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. Christmas morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't listen. I wish I hadn't. "Hi, Aunt Vanessa," a small voice said, hesitant and soft. "Daddy says we can't open our presents this year. He said it's your fault. Mommy said not to cry, but, can you come over? I miss you." I sat down hard on the couch. That was it. Not the lies, not the insults, not the threats. That voicemail broke something in me. Because Madison had dragged her children into this, used them like shields, turned me into the villain in their story to save her own pride. And in that moment, I knew I was done playing defense. The storm hadn't even started yet, and I was finished being the umbrella. I didn't respond to my niece's voicemail, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. I listened to it again and again. Her small voice trying to be brave, trying to make sense of a story she never asked to be part of. Each time it played something twisted tighter in my chest until I finally turned my phone, face down, and walked away from it. That night I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying years of moments I'd brushed off. Every joke at my expense, every favor turned expectation. Every time I'd been praised for being easy and low maintenance, not realizing those words were just polite ways of saying convenient. By morning, the sadness had hardened into resolve. I stopped avoiding the truth. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements, not just the last few months, but everything. I built a spreadsheet the way I do at work. Clean columns, dates, totals, notes, mortgage payments, utilities, insurance gaps, the car lease, month after month after month. When I reached the bottom, I stared at the total, just under $95,000. My stomach dropped. Seeing the number written out, undeniable, documented, felt different than knowing it in theory. This wasn't helping out. This wasn't family support. This was a down payment on a house. This was a college fund. This was my life, siphoned away quietly while I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. I thought of Daniel's words. Make sure you're not setting yourself on fire. I finally admitted the truth I had been burning for years. I called a financial advisor first. Someone neutral. Someone who didn't know my family. When she reviewed my accounts, she paused longer than expected. "You know," she said carefully, "you're actually in a very strong position. Stronger than most people your age." I laughed once bitter. Doesn't feel like it. She smiled gently. "That's because you've been carrying someone else's weight." The fog in my head started to lift. Next, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Her name was Julia Bennett, mid-40s, sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of woman who didn't waste words. She reviewed my files in silence. When she finished, she leaned back and said, "Your sister calling you a freeloader is impressive." I raised an eyebrow. "You have proof of consent, proof of benefit, proof she requested help." Julia continued, "If she sues you, she loses. And if you want to push back, you have options." For what I asked. Defamation, she said simply. And reimbursement if you choose. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about something deeper, something steadier. Truth. Before I left her office, Julia added, "There's one more thing you should check. Your credit report." I did that night, and that's when I saw it. A personal loan, $20,000, taken out 8 months ago. With my information. The phone number was wrong close, but not mine. The email address was off by 1 letter. The IP address traced back to my hometown. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was identity theft. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart pounding, waiting for panic to set in. It didn't. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. Madison hadn't just used me. She hadn't just lied about me. She'd committed a crime. And for the first time since this started, I smiled. Because now this wasn't about family drama. This was about accountability. I filed a police report. I called Julia back. I froze every account connected to my name. When I showed her the loan documents, Julia's expression didn't change, but her tone did. "This just became criminal," she said. "If you want to move forward, we can." "I do," I replied. "I want the truth out." She nodded. "Then we do this clean, quiet, correct." That night I started drafting a letter. Not for social media, not for confrontation, just the facts. Calm, documented, unemotional. I didn't sign it with love. I signed it with my name. And for the first time in years, I felt taller. Not because I was winning, but because I was finally standing. I didn't rush anything after that. That surprised even me. There was a time in my life when I would have acted immediately. Sent the letter exposed, everything demanded apologies. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd learned painfully that truth doesn't need volume, it just needs timing. So I waited. I met with Julia again and again. We organized everything into clean, undeniable order: digital folders, timelines, screenshots, bank records, loan documents, messages where Madison had casually typed things like, "Can you cover it again this month?" as if my money were a subscription she'd forgotten to cancel. 28 months, $95,000, and now fraud. Once everything was locked down, I started severing ties legally completely. I removed myself as an authorized user from every account, sent formal notices, closed loops I hadn't even realized were still open. I wanted no loose ends, no ambiguity, no way for Madison to ever say she was still involved. She wasn't. Not anymore. The invitation came 2 weeks later. A cousin's engagement party. Small, low-key, mostly family. I hadn't planned to go. I hadn't even RSVP'd. But when I saw the date, something inside me settled into place. This was it. Not revenge, not drama. Resolution. Julia came with me, not as a guest, but as my attorney. She wore a simple gray dress and carried a slim leather folder. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was just another professional woman attending a family event after work. That was the point. The community center was exactly what you'd expect. Folding chairs, cheap floral arrangements, a playlist that jumped awkwardly between eras. Madison was already there when we arrived, laughing too loudly, gesturing too much, performing stability like she always had. When she saw me, her smile froze. She didn't approach, not at first. I waited until the room filled, until drinks were poured, until people relaxed into the assumption that nothing interesting was going to happen. Then I walked up to her. "Hey," I said calmly, "do you have a minute?" She stiffened. "Now's not really the time." "I think it is," Julia said, stepping beside me. Madison frowned. "And you are?" "Julia Bennett," she replied smoothly. "I represent Vanessa." Madison laughed too fast, too loud. "Is this a joke?" Julia handed her the envelope. Inside were copies, charges, documentation, notifications sent to banks, lenders, and investigators. A formal notice outlining the civil and criminal proceedings now in motion. Madison's color drained. "This is insane," she said, looking around, waiting for someone to jump in. No one did. "You're trying to ruin me." "No," I said evenly. "You did that yourself." Her mouth opened, closed. "You told everyone I sabotaged you," I continued, "that I stole from you, that I was jealous. But I have every receipt, every transfer. And now I nodded toward the envelope proof that you stole my identity." Someone nearby gasped. I didn't look at them. "There's no room at this table for freeloading losers," I said quietly. "Those were your words." She flinched. Then I stepped back. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't need to. Julia and I left while the room buzzed with whispered conversations and stunned expressions. The aftermath came quickly. The investigation moved forward. Digital forensics traced the loan back to Madison's home network. The civil case was filed publicly. No theatrics, just facts. Rachel took the kids and left. The SUV was repossessed. The house entered foreclosure. Mom called me once, left a long voicemail, said she didn't know what to believe anymore. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Weeks later, I got a card in the mail. Crayon drawings, stick figures holding hands. "Thank you for everything. I miss you. Emma." I sat on my couch holding it, feeling everything and nothing all at once. Madison didn't destroy me. She revealed me. She stripped away the weight I'd been carrying for years and forced me to see the truth I was never weak. I was just generous in a system that rewarded taking. And now finally I was free.